Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with senior political correspondent David Drucker. And David, President Biden is traveling around the country. He's rallying support to his massive legislative agenda right now, but his poll numbers are falling. So do you think that Biden can be a successful salesman for this when fewer people are supporting him?
It's difficult. So on the one hand, I think the president is doing the right thing. He's getting outside of Washington. He's making the case for his agenda. If he had looked at his poll numbers and said, well, that's a waste of time, he would actually make matters worse, and he wouldn't do himself any good by just deciding that he couldn't be influential. And with the bully pulpit of the presidency, you can always drive news coverage. You can always draw ears, listeners, readers. They're going to give you a look, even if they kind of say, oh, I'm angry at you, but they'll listen. So I think he's doing the right thing, and I think, honestly, he should have been doing a lot more of this over the summer as the agenda was first coming together. Obviously, with the Afghanistan debacle, he was fixated elsewhere, and for good reason. But the fact that this is happening so late in the game, or just down the road in the game, I think is the only criticism I would have. However, you raise a good point. With his poll numbers down, I mean, some polling has him in the mid-40s. I saw one poll that had him in the high 30s. Are people going to listen? Can you rally support to your agenda when people are dissatisfied with your leadership? It's harder. Look, it's just like anything. When you like somebody, when you believe in them, you're more likely to do what they say. You're more likely to do what they want. If you really are pleased with the job Biden is doing, you're more likely to tell your congressman, hey, I like that guy. He knows what he's doing. Listen to him. When you're angry with him, you're more receptive to voices that are questioning the agenda. You're kind of unsure. If you're unsure about his leadership on the economy, which polling shows, if you're unsure about his leadership, just unsure about him as a leader, which the polling is showing, that means people are going to question everything. And so they're going to listen to him and listen to him talk about his agenda. And people are going to wonder, is this a good idea? And especially with Democrats on Capitol Hill still either, however you look at it, negotiating among themselves or fighting among themselves, where they can't figure out yet what form this reconciliation spending package is going to take, it makes it harder because what people see, what voters see is, oh, you guys don't even know what you want, you don't know what you're doing. Meanwhile, the president's telling me this plan is great, and we already know that the plan isn't going to survive as is. So it's a little bit of a jumble, it's a little bit of a confusing message, and I think it's going to be hard for the president to bring this thing together in public as long as his poll numbers are underwater.
Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats reached a deal this week on raising the debt ceiling, at least temporarily. What do you think that deal really means?
Well, it means we're not going to default in late October. That's a good thing. The markets will be pleased. I think everybody on Capitol Hill, and to the extent people around the country are paying attention, will just take a big deep breath and say, okay, crisis averted. I think it's important to understand, though, that what this deal does not do is solve the problem, right? So the problem is that Republicans don't intend to give Democrats any votes to raise the debt ceiling on a permanent basis, on a long-term basis. And Democrats still say they have no intention of running a debt ceiling increase through the reconciliation package, which we call it reconciliation because under the Senate rules, it's the one thing that's protected from a filibuster. It only needs 51 votes to pass. So Republicans have been saying, hey, you want to run this massive spending package that we have no say in through Congress without our help? Fine. You can also put the debt ceiling increase in there, and you can run the debt ceiling increase through Congress without our help. Thank you very much. And it was about to, come to a head this month because Democrats were refusing to do reconciliation. Republicans were refusing to vote for a debt ceiling increase. So Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, the Republican leader, said, okay, here's what we're going to do. Since Democrats are complaining that reconciliation takes too long to process on the floor of the Senate with all of the votes it entails until you get to the end of that, we're going to give you 2 months. We will actually give you votes for a 2-month, $480 billion debt ceiling increase. It'll get you to early December. And now your complaints about having no time for reconciliation are moot. So get back to work. And of course, Democrats are still saying, yeah, we're not doing this through reconciliation, forget it. So I don't think we've really solved the problem, and I think that it could be a really interesting holiday season here in Washington.
And finally, back to this mess that the Democrats have created with their reconciliation bill, as you mentioned, without the pressure of a ticking clock, without a real upcoming deadline the way they had before. Do you see Democrats coming together anytime soon on the price tag and content of that bill?
Well, I think the key phrase there is anytime soon. I think they'll come together eventually, because I think that they all realize that the risk of not passing something is catastrophe, political catastrophe, at a time when they're already facing a possible political catastrophe in 2022. You know, historical trends say it's going to be a tough year for Democrats. The president's poll numbers now especially say it's going to be a tough year for Democrats. But if they can't even pass something after making such a big deal about how important this is, then voters are going to look at them and say, what's the point of having you people in charge anyway? I mean, Democratic voters would be dispirited. Independent voters who don't necessarily like the reconciliation package, but might, depending on how it's messaged, are going to say, well, clearly you just can't get anything done. They're holding the infrastructure bill that does have bipartisan support hostage, right? So it's not like the reconciliation package is going to fail, but they'll say, okay, fine, we'll do this infrastructure bill. That'll fix it, because the liberals are using that as leverage. We're not giving you votes for the thing that actually has a lot of support, unless we get votes for something that we don't know if anybody supports, but we're convinced people are going to love it and the country needs it. So I think they'll get there, but I think that they have to wrap their arms around the fact that Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema have the liberals in a vice, because 48 votes in the Senate is not a majority. They need 50 Democratic votes so Vice President Kamala Harris can wield the tiebreaker and get reconciliation across the finish line. And until they all agree to come down on a number, agree on which programs are in, which programs are out, they're not going to be there. But I think eventually, at some point, it'll happen.
Well, David, thank you for being here today. You can get more reporting from David and the rest of the political team at WashingtonExaminer.com.